Hello, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. And today we're going to speak about where you might be stuck related to preventing the meltdowns. We're going to talk about bubble wrap today. So when you think about one of the biggest problems that we see parents who are dealing with the meltdown cycle or even the shutdown cycle for teens, one thing that we like to get pretty clear on is where you might be stuck, right? So if you're dealing with the daily meltdowns, that might mean that your kid is hitting, kicking, screaming, biting, throwing their body down, flailing on the ground, and that could be happening on a daily or multiple times a day basis. And if your child is 4 or above, then that's not developmentally appropriate for them. And daily meltdowns for a 4-year-old is still quite on the extreme level of developmentally appropriate. Meltdowns themselves are developmentally appropriate for under 4, but daily meltdowns means that your child is out of control in their body, and it's likely that they're feeling out of control for a lot longer than just during the meltdown. Even that's where you're seeing the major concerning behavior during the day, obviously, right? So we really encourage you to pay attention if you notice that even your young child is dealing with such big emotions on a daily basis. So for parents of teens, this might mean that your teenager is running straight up into their room, shutting down, isolating, spending too much time on their screen, or just feeling completely stuck in moving forward and reaching their goals, wanting to be able to reach their goals, but staying stuck in what we call analysis paralysis or perfectionism, not knowing when to start because they don't think that they'll do it well. Whatever work or social engagement that, is the it of that day, right? So, Megan Thompson, and here at MTC, we help parents of highly sensitive kids eliminate those daily meltdowns in 8 weeks or less. And some parents we help parents of highly sensitive kids eliminate daily meltdowns in as little as 8 weeks. So with parents of sensitive teenagers, we help teens and their parents get on the same page, manage their big emotions together, and know exactly how to clearly communicate needs so that they can start reaching and achieving their goals and do that consistently. So when we think about one of the challenges that we see quite frequently for parents of sensitive kids and teens, a lot of it stems around how you're preventing those meltdowns, right? So if you're tired of preventing the meltdowns and the shutdowns, there's a couple key triggers that we notice for parents that you might be doing. So I want you to pay attention to this loop that you can be stuck in and what works to support you in getting out of it, okay? So when you're dealing with this, I liken it to trying to bubble wrap your child, right? You might have heard me say this before, but if you're preventing the meltdowns and you're trying to stay out of that cycle, it can often feel like you're just chasing your kid around with bubble wrap, just really trying tightly to wrap them up or to protect them from the environment, from their social, peer relationships, from teacher relationships, from the fear of failure by helping them do their homework every night, and to the point where you might be even doing some of it, or staying with them for hours on end, waiting painstakingly for them to get it done. And having that be a consistent issue in your relationship with your child to the point where you start to feel fried and your child is pushing back on that dynamic, right? So then when you start to notice that your child doesn't want you to help them, they start to push back, whether that mean by saying, no, I can do it all by myself, and then, have the proverbial fall flat on their face because they don't have the skills, or outright refuse to do it on their own, and so then you don't feel like you can support them in doing the activity on their own, because by the time they refuse your help, then they are stuck on the sidelines or just not getting started. And when this happens consistently, you can feel like you're backed into a corner as a parent, right? So one of the things that we see for parents at that end of your rope is that you start to do things that you regret as a parent. You start to yell. You start to throw your hands up and say, "It's all on you now. Like you got to deal with this, kid. Handle it." And it might be that you start to remove privileges to see if that works to motivate your child or your teen in their behavior. And so what you find consistently is this level of tightening the reins, if you will, isn't working either, right? And so then your child starts to spiral and spin out in the meltdown cycle even more. And this might create a fair amount of tension or a lot of tension in your relationship with your spouse or your co-parent, especially if the two of you aren't on the same page, that going harder and more intense on rules and expectations and lost privileges and groundings and even spankings can really lead you down the rabbit hole of feeling like nobody understands where you are and what's going to support your child. And it can pit you against your spouse as well if you're in a relationship, a partnered relationship. And so then there's the experience for parents is a sense of isolation, right? Obviously, if you feel like nobody understands you, you feel isolated. And so this is why and how oftentimes parents get to us is by feeling like nobody understands and then finally like feeling heard. And so if you're at this point where you're picking up what I'm putting down and you're understanding and you are able to notice that we have seen this before, I encourage you to stick around, because what we're talking about in this video in this training is all about how to get out of this cycle. Because one of the things that we see parents do is start to flip the script completely, right? Start to do the opposite. Okay, you know what? I have been overperforming for you. I've been trying to perfectionistically, myself as a parent, try to show you how to get all your work done on time and run through your agenda on a daily basis and review your coping skills, and then talk to your teacher for you, and then talk to your friends for you, to the point where I've run myself ragged and I'm getting resentful and angry about it, and I don't want to do that. So you know what? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to help you do it all yourself. And what happens is that also backfires, right? Because when you start to be playful and you start to hear what we have to say about increasing the amount of play in how you teach your child, the component of that, a component of that is missing because you can slingshot yourself right back into your old patterns pretty quickly. Why? Why is this happening, right? So let's talk about this. When you try to loosen the reins, what we need to remember is that you've trained your brain to look for problems to fix and to avoid. And so at this point, your brain is operating in the danger zone, in a, fight the fires or find the problem and eliminate it or prevent it zone. And when you're in that zone of trying to keep the peace or keep everything working smoothly, and then you start to reduce the amount of, this is well-intentioned, right? So I want to use the word support, but it's just ineffective support for your child, right? It didn't get you to your outcome. And so it creates a pattern where your child or your teen is left to their own devices to do it all. And so you might playfully encourage them and jokingly encourage them, or try to lighten the mood to encourage them. And they themselves are still stuck in this experience of feeling like they can't do it. And so as a result, they start to either fight back or shut down. Okay. And so when this is happening, it's really, really important for you and your child or your teenager that you're noticing why and how this pattern is happening, and then as a result, you'll be able to address it more clearly. So when we think about one of the things that we help our parents do, a huge component of stopping the meltdown cycle is not just noticing how you're reacting to your child, but also in how you're teaching your child, right? You guys know that, the 4 tenets, if you've watched our masterclass, of what really works, those 5 shifts that really work, that turn around the relationship with your child and how your child relates to the world. And one of the things that we know to be true is that when you're trying to teach your child coping skills, they need to be emotionally available for learning, and that starts with your relationship with them. Okay, because if at first, for many years maybe, you have been preventing meltdowns by being hypervigilant, then your child's feeding off of that fear that they can't do it either. And so when they're stuck in that moment of knowing, okay, now's the time for me to fly, your child is stuck, right? Your child is stuck and they're not able to move on. You're not able to see the progress that you were hoping for by flipping the script, by stopping being so perfectionistic, if you will, by trying really hard not to protect your child from experiences that they need to have growing up. So whether that be by saving your child from disappointment, by trying to do their homework for them, as I mentioned before, or just coaching your child to telling them what to do with their friends. Let's change the activity if they start to have an argument. Let's direct the play. Let's sit around them and play with them because you're not sure that your child will be able to hold it together in order to maintain that friendship beyond the initial play date. And so this is true for parents of 3, 4, 5-year-olds, but it's also true for parents of 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And by the time you get to, parenting your 9-year-old and not knowing whether or not you can drop your kid off at a friend's house, it's quite draining because that means that your child is home with you and you're the host of all those play dates if they maintain themselves, right? So it's a lot to handle, and we know that, right? So when you're breaking out of this and you're trying to be more playful and you're trying to shift out of this dynamic, we really want to speak about, and I want to use this metaphor that can be really helpful, is the difference between bubble wrap and a sieve. Okay, so what happens when you try to teach your child that they need to be bubble wrapped, right? Perfectionism and trying to prevent all these meltdowns in a way that leads your child to where you're chasing your child around with the proverbial bubble wrap, can lead your child to believing that they are not capable. And when they don't think that they're capable, then you teach them the same thing that you're trying to prevent, which is that they can't handle it. When on the flip side, you're trying to teach them coping skills that tell them that they can handle it. So what happens? Your child stays stuck. Okay, they can't understand how they'll be able to put those two things together, right? Mom says that I can manage my own emotions and I know how to do it, but then on the other hand, mom tries to tell me what to do and redirects the play that I'm having with my friends, or sits with me the whole time during homework, etc. And so then the message that you're sending your child is that they can't do it. So it's really critical that you find that not necessarily balance, but that you back away from managing all of the things and preventing the meltdowns. This is a clear pattern that we see for parents by the time they get to us, that I encourage you to notice if that's true for yourself, and why the meltdowns have quote unquote reduced, if you're noticing that, or why they have stopped, but they seem to come back in phases. That can also be really relevant as well, because as I mentioned before, it's tiring, right? So there's only so long that you can keep it up. So when we see the need for emotional experiencing as carrying sand, right? So we think about sand in a sandbox. Your child's sandbox is their environment. The sand is all the emotional experiences that they might have. And then when you're trying to teach them how to deal with the world, it's really crucial that that you hand them a sieve, a filter, a colander, versus handing them bubble wrap, right? Because sand can't permeate bubble wrap. What happens when you try to throw sand into bubble wrap is that it just sits there, and your child is carrying all this weight, this emotional weight, all day long. And then in order to get through the bubble wrap, they have to pop it. They have to pop through it, poke holes in it. And unfortunately, that bubble wrap loses its purpose, right? What does bubble wrap do? It protects things from breaking. And if you've popped bubble wrap, it's less productive, it's less effective, right? So your child starts to learn to break up, to put a wall up around their emotions because mom or dad will handle them for them. But unfortunately, on the other end, when they're left to manage it on their own, which is a developmentally appropriate expectation, they don't know how. They don't know how to handle them, and that's part of the issue with parents who are stuck trying to support their child in generalizing using skills from one environment to the next. So end up being worn out and stuck and fried, right? So when we move into playfulness, right, you need to really focus on creating a sense of capability. Your child is capable of moving out of this emotional intensity and into a place of feeling like they can handle big emotions, they can do hard things, and that they can also dissipate their emotion. And seeing their skill set like a sieve or like a colander means that they can choose which emotional events they want to keep in their scoop or their bowl, and then which emotional events they want to sift through and deal with, right? So it's not a matter of plucking them out, telling them that everything's going to be okay and they'll be fine and just get over it, right? It's a matter of letting those emotions move through their body, move through their intellect, through their thought process, and coming out the other side, not only okay, right, healthily, but feeling like it made them stronger. And a lot of times, a big pattern that we see for parents of sensitive kids when you start teaching your kid coping skills in this way is that there's a gap in that learning for your child, and they start to think that big events are scary, and that there isn't a learning experience through those big events. So one of the things that we know to be true that can be part of that gap is how you see your child and what capability they have, right? So this obviously starts with you, but I want to speak about the other component in the sense that it speaks about for your child, that they need to be able to see themselves as capable. And so it's really important that you're not following them around emotionally to support them in managing those big emotions. There are two things that can be true, that need to be true at the same time when you raise a highly sensitive child. One is that you are simultaneously supporting your child in managing their big emotions, and two, you're validating them that their emotions are okay to have, right? So when we work with parents in setting up that system of knowing exactly how they are getting in the way, and then moving into staying out of the aggravation, the frustration of wanting their child to fix it already and trying to tell their child that everything's going to be okay, and being able to teach their child and to manage their big emotions and slow them down and do that playfully, then children are able to experience a sense of capability. And when your child feels capable, then your child can handle problems creatively. So if this is a challenge that you find for both for either a parent of a young child or parent of a teen, then we encourage you to book a call with our team, because if you've been trying this and you've been working hard at it and haven't been able to figure out what's keeping you stuck, it's likely because the system that you're using isn't comprehensive enough or isn't getting you to the point where you feel like you have a repeatable process. And so I encourage you to book a call with our team, meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk for parents of children 8th grade and younger, and then teen talk. So meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk for parents of teenagers, high school and up. And on that conversation, we're going to speak about where you're stuck. We're going to talk about where you're struggling, what the major parts of what you've tried have been, and where there might be gaps. And we'll decide together if your goals and your gaps require support. And if we can support you in getting there, then we'll tell you exactly how that works on that call so that you can get started in knowing exactly how to turn that around. And if we think that there's something that's more efficient or effective, then we will steer you in that direction instead. So either way, we support you in noticing how to break out of this pattern so that you can go back to living your life without feeling like you have to keep tabs on your kid every 10 seconds, right? Because if your child is no longer 1.5 and you're not worried about them bonking their head as they toddle around, then you deserve to breathe. You deserve to breathe and do that consistently. Okay, and so does your child. So I hope that you have a wonderful day and that this conversation left you noticing what needs to happen next. And if that means contacting our team, then we are here to support you. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye.